from the Roman goddess of fresh water, Lympha. Related, but not entirely interchangeable, with nymph. To restore the water supply, Limpia, clean. Limpie la casa, clean the house. Limpiemos la casa, let's clean the house. Scruple, a sharp stone or pebble in the shoe. The sentence performs the same role as a narrator. It instantiates the existence of consciousness, the meshing of subjectivity and cognition. As for time, female subjectivity is often equated with a specific measure that essentially retains repetition and eternity from among the multiple modalities of time known throughout the history of civilization. On the one hand, there are cycles, gestation, the eternal recurrence of a biological rhythm that conforms to nature. On the other hand, there's monumental, eternal time without interruption or escape, the omnipotence of an archaic total mother with no frustration or separation. Both of these definitions place female subjectivity outside of historic linear time. Time as project, teleology, time as departure, progression, and arrival. The time of the sentence, noun plus verb, beginning, ending. In other words, the time of civilization. The engagement with syntax and sentence is the point of entry into historic time. Syntax is improvisatory instantiation in the midst of experience, not outside of or after experience, but in the midst of it. Once again, we're reminded, a cell is a miniature time span. B cells produce antibodies that bond to antigens, foreign substances encountered in the body. B cells target antigens for destruction. Antigen, antibody generator. Any substance that triggers an antibody is treated as foreign and potentially harmful. In autoimmune disorders, antibodies are generated by the body itself. Antigens are generated by the body itself. The effort to differentiate self and other takes place continually at the molecular level. That which seems to operate as a subject may be part of an immense discontinuous network of strands. Each of these strands are also woven of many strands. Different knottings and configurations of these strands, which are themselves dependent on myriad circumstances, produce the effect of an operating subject. She drew a small canoe shape with a fine line marker just below my collarbone and gave me a mirror to look at the marks while she explained how she would cut away the injured skin and sew the wound shut. She was pleased with the first layer of stitches, the absorbable subcutaneous layer, and decided I didn't need the outer layer. Once again, we're reminded, prose moves forward without restricting the range of motion. The sentence poses an ego at the same time that it exposes the artifice of ego. It asks to keep going, but it allows you to stop. The scale can change repeatedly, but still remains a point of contact. And the second piece I'm going to read is tentatively called Red Dust Tangle. A couple friends of mine gave me manuscripts they're working on that are kind of based on the Minotaur and the Maze, and they're both good friends, so I'm sure there was a lot of, it wasn't a coincidence that they're both writing about that. So I'm thinking about mazes and grids and intelligible or unintelligible pathways through space. And so that's kind of where this is coming from. It's sort of it's pretty new. It's sort of some throat clearing or some pacing, trying to figure out if this is going to turn into a longer work. Prologue. Everybody readily accepted that no one had the same idea of red. When different people looked, they saw different things. Colors were for when words wouldn't do the job. By extension, this was true for everything that everybody looked at. I put gifts outside, beside the dumpster where they stayed clean. A blanket, a flashlight, a pair of socks. When I looked later, they were gone. 1. The honest facades of these strange neighborhoods, mostly brick, mostly squared off against the street and against each other, felt familiar. Even the simplified bungalows of the old coast were more aware of being looked at. These brick boxes existed to be lived in, but they were no less virtuosic for that. in the way that the flat, regular street grid accommodates movement equally in any direction. The houses, built square to the edges of the building envelope, made the streets seem like landscapes without mysteries. But the pervasive alleyways made a nameless second grid that shadowed every street and harbored what couldn't fit into the named places. A shadow is a ruin of the original. The clean edges reappear as a monstrosity, as an alien erupts from within. It was the figure-ground battle, one always struggling to overtake the other. A shadow touches surfaces without transforming them, like light, only with shape. A shadow gathers the stray bits of surface together and presents them as a single thing. All the monstrous possibilities that hide between one straight line and another emerge. The grid was a way to organize a lot of people at one time. The identical intersections looked the same to anyone. Only the monstrous topography made one corner a cavern and one a hill. The grid of forward, forward, forward made us feel that each thing was like the other, even if they were not at all alike. It was the monster that made the difference. The monstrous failure of perfection turned the straight lines into a tangle. A maze is often made of such accessible right angles and flat surfaces. The mystery needs to be compelling to keep us going through the entanglement. A refreshment can break up the forward, forward, forward march of the grid. It's the nature of the grid that any direction you go is forward. The labyrinth is there to conceal the infidelity. A tangled path makes it harder to find the evidence. If it can't be seen, is that fiction? A monster bends the grid into a tangle, as a tumor hijacks the blood supply for itself. The tumor's tangle has no solution because it references nothing but itself. The tumor realigns all the efforts of the organism to itself, like a mirror bends space into its own planar surface. They aspired exactly to the limits of their capacities. They risked nothing. They found the shape of the possible and never wavered. Those flat, loving facades. Freed from the requirement to move forward, the monster dissipates. It moves in quantum pathways, everywhere at once, a fluid taking form within a gas. All organs might once have started as tumors that then became useful, and so were perpetuated until now their very being defines the organism. The monster that shatters tranquility later joins the normal rhythm, then becomes indispensable to it, then becomes the meaning of its world. 2. It was a weightless ceiling hovering just above our heads. It was nothing, but all our effort went into keeping it from falling on us. We crouched and bent our necks and stood a full foot shorter than our heights. We raised our arms with our palms turned up to press this weightless surface away from us. At times it brushed the tops of our heads. Carrying our shelter, sheltering in place, our place was this pantomime of shelter. We pulled this ceiling along above our clattering caravan, a movable scrim. The simple passage of light made us feel part of the place. We used the largest, heaviest things we could find and the smallest. We tracked the movements of the smallest, farthest things with slabs and boulders. Whatever we could take in, this weightless dome, this clattering, chattering all around us, we made use of. We marked the movement across the tiny dome. Everyone said the labyrinth came later, that first was order, then betrayal, then the tangle to cover up the crime. But wherever we go, we find the tangle first. What if the monster made the grid and not the labyrinth? If infidelity was the loss of certainty, the labyrinth was just the site of endless possibility. Certainty reduces the possible to the imaginable. Certainty is a replica, a miniature that can be held and carried. A concept to be repeated must have order. The unrepeatable is a labyrinth. In the labyrinth, certainty vanishes. Right away, we believed in pixelation. In small pieces that put together made a whole, we saw milk in the field of stars. It was the monstrous who drew lines between the stars and drew the movement of the sun across the ground. Monstrosity was taking parts and fathoming a whole. The monstrous ones made up what wasn't there. Red dust gathered on the terracotta windowsills. I watched the alley from my window on the second floor. 3. Gathering these filaments, we were tracing light, trying to make it matter. A spiral was a tangle with the monster sorted out. Somebody took the gifts from the alleyway. I bought trinkets on the corner for $0.25 each. I didn't want them. At best, I was unsure about them, but they were what he had to sell. The red dust rose continually from the twice-formed stone, once granite, then sandstone. The powdery film on the windowsills settled also on our skin, as if we bathed in smoke. Smoke erupting from the grid dissolved the lines that traced the movement's certainty. A cloud, like a labyrinth, contains its own intelligibility, as a disintegration of lines back into points can be explained as suspension or as ephemerality. If I knew the way, I'd lead you here. I'd lead you here if I knew. We traced the light, trying to make it matter. Thank you.